Hello everyone. Welcome to today's English General English online class. Today we are going to discuss an important topic, barriers to listening. We listen to people every day, but listening effectively is not always easy. Noise, distractions, stress, difficult language, and lack of concentration can prevent us from understanding a message properly. So, in today's class, we are going to learn what listening barriers are, what types of barriers we face, and how we can overcome them. Before we begin, think about this question. What usually distracts you when you are listening to a class? Keep your answer in mind. We will discuss it during the lesson. By the end of the today's class, you will be able to understand the meaning of listening barriers, identify physical, psychological, linguistic, and cognitive barriers, recognize poor listening habits, learn practical ways to overcome listening barriers. In simple words, our goal today is to understand what prevents us from listening effectively and what can we do about it. The purpose of the class, in other words, we understand the meaning of listening barriers, identify the major types of listening barriers, recognize poor listening habits, understand how barriers affect the listening process, learn practical ways to overcome listening barriers, develop effective and active listening skills. What are barriers to listening? Now let us understand the basic concept. What is a barrier? A barrier is something that creates an obstacle. Therefore, a barrier to listening is anything that interferes with our ability to receive, understand, remember, or respond to a message. For example, imagine that your teacher is explaining an important topic while there is loud construction noise outside. You may hear the teacher, but you may miss important information. So, noise becomes a barrier to listening. Barriers may arise from environment, the listener, the speaker, the message, or the communication situation. The first type is physical and environmental barriers. These barriers come from our surroundings. For example, traffic noise, construction work, or people talking around us can disturb our listening. Some common physical and environmental barriers are noise, poor acoustic or weak audio, uncomfortable seating or temperature, distance from the speaker, mobile phones, and other distractions. Students, think about your online class. What can disturb your listening at home? Maybe mobile phone notifications, television, people talking, poor internet audio. All these can affect effective listening. You can see noise, poor acoustic, uncomfortable seating, distance from the speaker, mobile phones. They may distract you. The next type is physiological barriers. Physiological barriers are related to our physical condition. When the body is tired or uncomfortable, our concentration and understanding may decrease. Look at the examples: fatigue, headache, hunger, hearing difficulty, illness, tiredness. For example, imagine attending a class when you are extremely sleepy. You may hear the teacher, but you may not understand or remember the lesson properly. Have you ever attended a class when you were very sleepy? If yes, you already know how difficult effective listening can be. Now we come to psychological and emotional barriers. Our emotions have a strong influence on our listening. When we are stressed, anxious, angry, or frightened, our mind may concentrate on those emotions instead of the speaker's message. The common barriers include stress and anxiety, anger, fear or excitement, prejudice and preconceived ideas, lack of interest or motivation, defensiveness. Suppose you are angry with your friend. Your friend is explaining something to you, but you are thinking about your anger. Even though you can hear your friend, you are not listening carefully. Therefore, anger becomes a psychological barrier. Can our emotions affect our listening? Yes, definitely. Our emotions affect our listening. The next type is linguistic and semantic barriers. These barriers occur when we cannot properly understand the words, language, or meaning of a message. Examples include unfamiliar vocabulary, technical jargon, difficult or abstract language, different accents or pronunciation, language and dialect difference. Imagine that a doctor uses many medical terms while explaining something to a person who doesn't know medical vocabulary. The person may hear every word but may not understand the message. That is a linguistic barrier. If you hear an unfamiliar word during a class, what should you do? Ask for clarification, right? You can. Could you please explain the term? That is good listening habit. The next type is cognitive barriers. These barriers are related to our thinking and mental processing. Our mind can sometimes process thoughts faster than a person speaks. This may give us time to become distracted or start thinking about something else. Information overload, short attention span, difficulty processing complex ideas, thinking about unrelated matters, difference between speaking rate and thought rate. Imagine I'm explaining a lesson. Suddenly you start thinking, what am I going to do after this class? You are in the classroom, but your mind is somewhere else. That is cognitive barrier. Have you ever realized that you have been looking at the screen but have not understood what the teacher has been saying? That is common listening problem. Now we come to cultural barriers. Cultural differences can influence the way we understand a message. People may have different cultural values, communication styles, gestures, assumptions, social norms. Stereotyping can also become a barrier. For example, a gesture may have one meaning in one culture and another meaning in a different culture. Similarly, different accents or communication styles may sometimes create misunderstanding. Therefore, we should listen with an open mind and avoid making quick judgments. Now we have speaker and message barriers. Sometimes the problem doesn't come only from the listener. The way the speaker presents the message can also affect communication. It highlights some common problems like interrupting the speaker, preparing a reply while listening, judging the speaker, pretending to listen, daydreaming. Suppose your friend is telling you something important. Instead of listening carefully, you are already thinking, what am I going to say next? You are preparing your response instead of understanding the message. That is poor listening. Now let's look at some poor listening habits. They include interrupting the speaker, preparing a reply while the speaker is talking, judging the speaker instead of the message, pretending to listen, focusing only on details, daydreaming. One important term here is pseudo listening. Pseudo listening means pretending to listen without actually paying attention. For example, you may say yes, yes, okay, but your mind is somewhere else. That is pseudo listening. Remember the important statement on this slide. Listening to respond is different from listening to understand. Which is better, listening to respond or listening to understand? Listening to understand is better. Now let's understand how barriers can affect different stages of listening. Receiving. Noise and distractions can affect receiving the message. Interpreting. Difficult language or unfamiliar ideas can create problems. Remembering. Weak concentration or memory limitations can affect our ability to remember. Evaluating. Bias and prejudice can influence our judgment. Responding. Poor questioning or paraphrasing can affect our response. So remember, a barrier can occur at almost any stage of the listening process. How to overcome listening barriers? Now we come to the most practical part. How can we overcome listening barriers? Active listening requires conscious effort and practice. We can overcome listening barriers by first, choosing a suitable listening environment. Second, maintain attention and eye contact. Third, putting away distracting eye devices. Fourth, controlling emotional reactions. Fifth, asking for clarification. Sixth, taking brief notes. Seventh, paraphrasing the main idea. Suppose you don't understand what your teacher is explaining. What should you do? Don't remain silent. Ask for clarification. That is an important part of active listening. Now let's do a short listening activity. I want to listen to carefully to a 30-second message. Okay. After listening, write down the main idea, write two supporting details, identify one possible listening barrier, compare your answer with a partner. Now think about this question. Which barrier affected your listening most? Was it noise, distraction, language, emotion, lack of concentration? Pause this video and write down your answer. Let's quickly revise what we have learned. Listening is more than hearing. Second, listening barriers may be physiological, psychological, linguistic, cognitive, cultural, behavioral. Third, noise and distractions affect attention. Fourth, bias and emotions affect interpretation. Finally, active listening strategies help us overcome barriers. A good listener focuses on understanding before responding. We have reached the end of today's lesson. Before we close, remember these five important points. Recognize the barrier, control what you can control, focus on the message, clarify what you don't understand, practice active listening every day. Let me conclude with the quotation given in the one. We can say most people don't understand with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. So, students, remember, don't just listen to reply, listen to understand. Thank you for watching this online class. I hope today's lesson has helped you understand the different barriers to listening and the ways to overcome them. In the next class, we will discuss strategies for effective listening. Thank you, students. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep improving.